If you kill a dozen people, you're an assassin. If you kill 1,000 people, you're a king. Hi, ghouls, gals, and spooky pals. Welcome back to the Monstration Club. I'm Emma,
And I'm Jen.
and welcome back to our episode. Please like and subscribe if you're into spooky books, content, movies, other things, and you want to talk with us about it because this is what we love to do. Today, we're going to be talking about Throne of Glass, Book One, the episode you've all been waiting for, even though it was published like how long ago?
A while. We're a
A
little
while
late on
ago,
this one.
2012. So it's been a whole 12 years. Yeah.
Has it really been that long? Okay, well, surprise! It's a rewind. It's a
It's a
flashback episode.
flashback Friday. Yeah. So welcome in to Throne of Glass. So there are going to be some spoilers, but only from book one, because that's the only book I've read so far. So I can't give you any other spoilers. Yeah. So, okay, for people that don't know, I live in the South. We are experiencing a lot of turmoil here right now. And recently, we've been having a lot of books be banned in school libraries and public libraries. And so I found out too, this book is not officially banned in our library, but what's happening is they've just slowly been taking books off of the shelves without telling people. So when I go online to look for this book at my library, it doesn't exist at my library. But there's a library like in the city and it you can rent it there. So it's definitely just not in our library, but is in the like city library because I'm out in the suburbs. And yeah, and then I started thinking like, what about this book would make it banned? What are your thoughts? Help
I
make
have,
this make sense.
I don't agree with it, first of all. But I do have like a few thoughts on what someone could make not necessarily a compelling argument for, but an argument for.
Mhm.
I'm happy that I don't have this problem where I currently reside, with books being pulled off of the shelf. Because that just feels
Mhm.
deceptive too. Like, just ban the book and let people know you're doing
Mhm.
this censoring rather than just let's just sneakily like take it away. That feels
Mhm.
really deceptive to me, and I'm not a huge fan of that either. I'm not a huge fan of any of it. Reading should be accessible for anyone. Anyway, we can talk about that another time. I guess it is like when you think about it, it is a pretty violent book. It's not the most
Mhm.
violent book I've ever read,
Mhm.
but it is also given the demographic that might be picking it up, or one of the demographics that might be picking
Mhm.
it up could be a younger adult, and it's violent. It's kind of gory.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's a thought I had, and maybe just like, I mean, you do live in the South, so I don't think this is shocking. I think I had a friend growing up, and I didn't live in the South, who uh who couldn't read Harry Potter because of the magic in it.
Yeah.
And I, d- I s- I don't know if it was related. I watched Tales at this girl's house. For context, me as
I used to
the
watch
atheist.
Veggie Tales.
Oh, Emma. Oh God,
Yeah.
I hated it.
Oh,
I hated
where is
it.
my hairbrush? Oh, where is my hairbrush? If you've seen Veggie Tales, you'll know.
Yeah.
Um,
If you were forced to watch it
yeah.
as a little atheist child and had no idea what was going on, or if you're Emma and you just have like really fond memories of it, either way. But she couldn't read Harry Potter, and her family, was just super. I don't even know what religion they
Hmm.
were, but they
Hmm.
shut that shit down.
Hmm.
So maybe like that's part of it, living in the South, is the magic
Maybe.
involved. But I don't think Harry
Although
Potter is probably banned at your library. So,
it is. Yeah. I believe it is.
well, then that
Um,
could, I mean,
yeah.
that could be
Well, to
why.
be fair, magic is banned here too. Are
That's a
we?
good
Are we
point.
living in wherever this place was? Rifthold? Rifthold? Yeah.
And Ardalan.
A darling. Yeah.
A
The
darling, a
other day,
darling.
my we were talking about all of the things that keep getting taken away here, and my partner was like, "Are we living in Footloose?"
That's funny.
I was like, "It
Is
kind
this
of
the
does
town
feel
from
like that."
Footloose?
Is this a town for Footloose? Yeah. So, yeah, I guess like the magic thing, could definitely be, and there is some violence. Yeah, there is some violence. I have some thoughts
It's gory.
about
It's a little gory.
it is a little gory. I would argue that all fantasy is gory though. So we like most fantasy, 90% of it. Like fantasy and horror because like that's part of what makes reading fun is not it being gory, but is that like you're entering these worlds you would never enter in real life, right? Like I would never
Hmm.
battle for my life in real life. I hope not. Unless we become like the Hunger Games. But otherwise it's never going to happen, but I can read about it.
I'm curious, and you may or may not know this, and maybe we can put it in the description because I am just curious. Do you know, are like a lot of fantasy books banned at your library or just not there? Or if we've just selected Harry Potter in this one and they just happen to not be there? Like, do you know if like that dragon book that's really popular, is it called like Aragon or
Thorfinn.
something?
Oh, Aragon. Oh, I don't. Um, so I don't
I'm just
know,
curious.
but I do know that Emily reads a lot of classic literature, and a lot of those books are also banned. So I think it's just like
Really?
yeah, I think it's anything that like encourages critical thought. Like I'm pretty sure like Anne Frank might be banned, and like Night about the Holocaust
Yeah.
is banned. And the reason why it's banned is because it's like not the reason I would think it would be banned. Like sometimes they're like, there's this like nudity scene, and that's why it's banned. And
Hmm.
so there's a lot of like Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou is also banned, I believe. So there's a lot of books that are either banned or just like not in the library. Because when my partner
That
went, she was like, there's like no classic literature here. And that might be part of the reason why.
that could be part of like, I mean, if they're censoring like that, it could be like political and social critiques that they're just
Hmm.
like, we're not
Hmm.
dealing with this at all, right or wrong. If it's
Hmm.
upsetting the system in any kind
Hmm.
of way,
Hmm.
let's not put it in
Yeah.
there. Which is what's in your library? What's left? What's there
Well,
right
I
now?
think the thing too is there's a lot of things there that by their measure should be banned, but I just don't think they know about them. Like
Mm,
there's a lot of Dean Koontz. Dean Koontz writes about, he's like a horror and suspense writer. So a lot of his stuff, I think if they knew about it would be banned. So I think it's a lot of honestly just things that are popular
what
that
about Stephen
get
King?
there's some Stephen King there. Um, I don't know that there's like a ton of Stephen King, like compared to how many books he's written. There aren't, I would say, like a proportionate amount of them. But I would also say more of them probably would get taken off the shelves if they were more popular, or more in the public discourse. Because I think that's part of the issue is that like these books are really popular right now, so that's why they're not there.
Yeah,
I think if they were not popular, they wouldn't notice because I think it is not an actual like this isn't actually corrupting you, right? It's
yeah,
just a like, oh shit, these people like this, so like let's pull it down because of some agenda that we have. So and our library is becoming very, we have a lot of issues with like bullying staff and like it is so weird how reading is becoming political. Like I never thought I'd see the day where like reading was political. And so it is this like really weird thing that my brain does not comprehend. Um, which brings us into our conversation about morality.
I just I think this book sets up a really nice discussion about morality, particularly with Selena.
Hmm.
And she is, I think she's a likable character. I think um as an audience, maybe I'm wrong and you have your perspective, but I think as an audience, we root for her.
Hmm.
And even though she's like done all of these horrible things that maybe we haven't seen, but by everyone's accounts, she has
Hmm.
done. Um, and I believe it.
Hmm.
So, I just think it's really interesting because she's likable and no one wants her to go back to prison. No one wants her to go back to
Hmm.
this work camp. Everyone wants her to win and becomes the
Hmm.
king's champion. But then you're also met with, okay, but once she's the king's champion, then she's just doing what she was
Hmm.
doing, but in a worse way because now it's for maybe a worse way, who knows? But it's not great either because then the king is probably just going to kill his political enemies, which is
Hmm.
then going to lead to a lot more tyranny than there already is. I just think she's a really interesting character and really complicated, like what's going on in her head and how she's navigating some of these
Hmm.
situations.
One, I think at the end, I think it's this book at the end, she does, because I'm like 10 pages into the next one. She does say something about like how in the past she was able to have rules around like I don't kill kids and I don't kill, there's like
Hmm.
another group of people she didn't kill. And she wonders like, will I still have that um when I work for him? But so something I think is really interesting about her character, I guess two things about morality. One thing that's really interesting about her character is I do think she's very likable. And like what we're seeing is this young woman that has been seriously traumatized and like in basically like indoctrinated into assassinary or whatever whatever
Assassinary.
if we wanted to like consider it a trade, like the trade school of assassins. Um who may not have chosen that life otherwise. But something I think is really interesting is she is a likable character, but we never see her kill anyone, I don't think, right? Like she kills the Ritterak,
Yeah,
but she doesn't actually kill
no,
anyone. So
she
the only
doesn't.
stories we have are things she's done in the past. And I find myself wondering, like, would she be as likable if she was assassinating, if she was assassinating people throughout this book? Like, would we still find her likable if there were moments of that included in here? Do you think we would? I don't know if we would. I feel like it's intentional that she's almost portrayed as this like innocent person. Even
I
Kale
feel
kills for
like
her. She doesn't kill for herself.
I feel like you should keep going and I should tread lightly because I am on book 5. And so I should just tread lightly with this one.
Do you think you would have enjoyed her as much in the first book had that been a huge part of it? Or do you think it was important to kind of set her up in this way so
I
that
think
she
I
could
still
change
would have
throughout?
I think I think it would have not to pull an Emma and make up a word, but I think it would have added to her badassery. And I don't think it would have bothered me depending on who she was killing. Like
Hmm.
if she had killed Kane, right on, girl, you go. But if she's killing like her competitors and like it had
Uh-huh.
ended up being her assassinating all the competitors in this horrible, morbid way, um, I don't know that we would have been rooting for her. I think
Hmm.
that would be another book. It would be an interesting book and fun to read as well, but I don't know that we would be rooting for her, especially like with it being book 1 and
Hmm.
not knowing very much about her and there being very
Hmm.
little like Emma didn't read, and I'm kind of reading it now, but Emma didn't read The Assassin's Blade before jumping
Hmm.
into this book. And I think that's pretty common. I think you read that around book 3.
Hmm.
Um, but you don't know anything about her. And so if she just was straight up killing people and it
Hmm.
wasn't previous accounts of that happening, I think we would have found her less likable, yes.
Hmm. Yeah, it's more like Hunger Games and less like American Psycho, right? Like it's more like
American
she
Psycho
is
is what
this,
came up for me too when
yeah,
I'm
like
thinking
she's
about
more
it.
like
Yeah.
this person put in this bad situation. And even when they talk about her assassinating people, they talk about the fact that she was good about it, but there's not a lot in there about who she assassinated or why she assassinated them.
Hmm.
So I think it's just interesting that she was introduced in this way where like we know the backstory, but she is almost portrayed as like an innocent flower and doesn't even kill the person trying to kill her in it, right? Like I feel like
Yeah.
it's meaningful that Kale kills Kane and not her. Because up to this point, she has kind of, I feel like maybe it's trying to tie some of that tension in a way that's pushing us more toward liking her and less toward like she did these really awful things.
I have
which
a
is
question.
interesting. Yeah.
Do you think this just came to me? I don't know why, if it was because we were talking about her not killing and why that might be, but do you think Nehemia softened her, like that friendship kind of softened her, or she would already kind of be like this, I guess, if you get what I'm saying? Like, I think in talking about this with you, Nehemia really does operate kind of as a moral compass for her, and that friendship is really important to her not being a deranged psycho if that's who she was.
That's very, and I wonder if my opinion will change as I go along because I feel like I feel like Nehemia would have less of a problem with her killing people for the right reasons, though. But maybe that's wrong because Nehemia is kind of this force for good, and she doesn't really engage in a lot of violence. So, yeah,
I
perhaps.
get,
I think the way people see her really shapes how she wants to see herself, for sure. Like the way Kale and Dorian and Nehemia and everyone sees her does kind of influence maybe. It's almost like a starting over in some ways, like a
hmm.
recreating of herself.
Yeah, that for whatever reason, in book one, that female friendship seems important in my head somehow,
Hmm. Hmm.
in her not being so hard.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I think her that female friendship and all of her friendships, and something that I thought was interesting thinking about morality. Oh, I wrote it down somewhere, but I can't remember. But I wrote down the sentiment of like, if you kill a dozen people, you're an assassin. If you kill 1,000 people, you're a king. And I think
Mm.
that is very relevant to the topic of morality, right? Because she is viewed as bad for killing probably like dozens of people, whereas the king has authorized the killing of thousands of people. And I think part of the morality thing that's so interesting is there's this theme running throughout this first book of especially Kale, a little bit with Dorian, but more so Kale, viewing her as the bad one, with Dorian too, and kind of chipping away at the ways in which she has struggled differently than he has. Like there's a few times he makes allusions to this idea that like she should have done something different or something else should have happened. Like, well, you did something to deserve being in Endovier,
And Dovier.
Endovier. And then as he's kind of talking to her, he's saying like, oh man, like you're just a girl. Like there's a few times where he has these moments of like, oh shit, like you're just a girl who like got swept up in this bad situation. And it's almost this like chipping away and this recognition, I guess, of like the systems at play that made her who she was, as opposed to like her just being a bad person and him realizing like, oh, you're not just a bad person. Like you were kind of shaped to be this bad person by the forces at play.
And that's good. I think that Kale figured that out. And this kind of, I guess, ties into our conversation from before about Kale and
Mhm.
Dorian. But I think that is part of my problem with Kale is his morality is so deeply tied to him like doing the honorable
Mhm.
thing and the right thing, and not
Mhm.
necessarily the right thing, but for his kingdom and for his king.
Mhm.
And that's never a good thing. Like unwavering loyalty, like that is never a good thing. And so I think it's interesting too in talking about the way he views Selena's morality. Like he himself is maybe going to have to reckon with that morality at some point too, or not, and
Mhm.
just, you know, um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I think, good morality discussion to be had
Yeah.
just on this book alone, and these characters
Mhm.
who like maybe, the character development I think is pretty good here, but I mean, spoiler alert, it certainly deepens the more you read the books, as you would expect. Um, but even though we're not given like that much, it's not that long of a book, I think they're pretty complex characters.
Hmm.
It's interesting.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting too that Selena really trusts Kale as it relates to her training and keeping her
Hmm.
safe, but does not trust him as it relates to these larger questions of like, um, if I don't want to be fully adherent to this king that is like killing rebels and doing bad shit, I don't trust him with that. And so it's interesting
Hmm.
the things that she does and doesn't trust him with. And like I think it's an question, right? Like, who's worse, the king that kills thousands of people or her who kills people personally, right? I think we could all argue the king is probably worse because he's a terrible person. But I think it's an interesting question of like, can she still be a good person if she's killing people? Especially it teases in the next books, right? Like, if she does start killing people based on the king's mandate and that alone, can she still be a good person? Oh, I have one more thing though before we get off. How is it possible that Kale hasn't killed a single person being captain of the guard? Like that storyline, I'm like, that feels impossible, right? Like it feels very improbable.
Hale's whole thing seems improbable to me. And it makes you wonder.
Is he your Ellen in this show, in this
Oh,
series?
no, and no one is my Ellen. I don't like Ellen from Mistborn. No one is that. But I find that improbable too. And you
Okay.
have to wonder why, and if there is something else going on there, or just the opportunity hasn't presented itself, just
Hmm.
what's going on
Hmm.
with Kale and that.
What's going on with Kale? We just want to know. Asking for a friend.
Gotta know.
Yeah, so let us know, like, can you be an assassin and still be a good person? Who's worse, the king or Selena? And if she does end up
Okay.
killing,
But it's up to you. It's up to
but it's
you,
up to you, but there
obviously.
is a right answer, but it's also up to you. And if she ends up killing him, if she ends up killing for him just because, can she still be a good person? Can you be a good person and do bad things? Or do the things define who you are as a person, right? Like that's kind of the gist of it. Let us know. I would love to hear. Like and subscribe if you're interested in hearing more. We're going to be talking a lot more about this series and some other spooky series, along with just like general spookiness of ghosts and ghost hunting and paranormal investigating and liminal
Monsters.
spaces and monsters, dragons. If you like
Ooh,
that stuff,
we should cover dragons.
we need to cover probably next, maybe, is dragons.
Maybe
Oh, maybe we should
top five
do
favorite
a
dragons.
yeah, like maybe we should go do a throwback to like some of the like Harry Potter dragons versus Game of Thrones dragons versus
Fourth
like
wing.
fourth wing dragons. Oh, let's do that.
Yeah, that could
Yeah.
be really fun.
Oh my
Like a
God.
March Madness bracket.
Yeah, March Madness of Dragons. Yeah, so if you want to see the March Madness of Dragons, like
Maybe
and
we should wait till
subscribe.
March, actually. But that give us
Maybe we
time to
will.
prepare the bracket.
Yeah, we need some time. There's a lot of dragons out there, and we need to make sure we do it justice. Yeah. All right. Well, in the meantime, stay spooky, y'all.